What is up, Dynasty Leaguers? Welcome back into another DLF YouTube channel video. It is Tuesday. It's mock draft day. And so we're moving away from the rookie mock drafts that we've been doing over the past 2 or 3 months. And we're now starting to focus on Dynasty Startup mocks. So I'm very excited to start to do this. And today's video is just going to be running through my personal mock draft strategy and looking at that and seeing maybe if there's certain positions or draft slots that actually works out better. Of course, obviously, we're not going to do any trading in this one. It's just more of a direct snake draft, but there could be trading in yours. So you could kind of formulate, around my strategy with certain positions if you're trading up or trading down. But we're just looking at, just a typical 12-team Superflex PPR mock draft, snake draft. So this one's going to be very, very fun. I'm very excited for it. So let's get right into the video. So as I said in the introduction, we're going to be running through a 12-team Superflex PPR mock draft, and we're going to be looking specifically at, my strategy and just kind of seeing if it's really going to actually work. Something that I've been tweaking over the past couple of weeks and years, actually, looking at the dynasty landscape and the current landscape and the market and the values right now in June of 2021, and just trying to see what the best way, in my opinion, is to build out a dynasty roster from scratch in a startup snake draft. So this one's going to be very, very fun, and I can go through kind of my quick overview of what I'm looking to do in this startup draft. And basically, I want to, in Superflex, solidify at least 2 really, really good quarterbacks. That one of those guys can be an elite guy, a top 5 or 6 quarterback, one of those rushing guys that you see at the top of the first rounds. I really want to solidify potentially one of those, as well as a second very, very good one. And then a third one that is a starter in the NFL, but a starter that has some longevity to him. Not a guy that could potentially be replaced this year or, after the season. Not like a Drew Lock, something like that. I don't really want to invest in a guy like that. More so, just a solid QB3, I think would be very, very good. And then I also, can fit a quarterback 4 onto my roster as well. But that guy is much more of a project quarterback, looking to see, potentially if I have anything in him. And if I do, maybe potentially selling him off, or if he actually turns into something that makes another one of my quarterbacks more expendable. Just seeing what I have in more of a project type quarterback as my quarterback 4. The running back position in Dynasty, I am a 0 RB or like a modified 0 RB type of drafter and startup roster builder, just because I believe that I can stream the running back 2 position a lot more than I can my wide receiver 2 or my wide receiver 3, just because of the nature of the position. And I trust that as I roster a lot of running backs, a lot more running backs than I do wide receivers, basically like a 1.5 to 1 or a 2 to 1 ratio in running backs to wide receivers that I'm rostering, I can have a weekly RB2 starter, especially if I have a very solid RB1 starter on more of a week-to-week basis. The wide receiver position, like I said, if I'm having 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1 running back to wide receiver ratio, my wide receivers are going to be very, very solid. I want maybe 4 or 5 guys that I can start on a weekly basis. They don't have to necessarily be wide receiver 1s, although I can fit a wide receiver 1, maybe a couple wide receiver 2s, maybe a volatile wide receiver 3. Just kind of lean into the variance on week-to-week basis. But I want guys that I can believe in and consistently start on a weekly basis at the wide receiver position, while allowing myself to keep it shorter and not really have all too much depth, but just solid overall wide receivers. The tight end position is just kind of like whatever happens. I can fit a tight end if he's an elite guy on there, obviously. I can definitely go after them. But I'm also comfortable streaming the position with a couple of the guys that I draft more so in the later double-digit rounds and seeing where we go there. So the tight end position to me is just kind of like how the draft board falls. And I might be able to, grab myself like a George Kittle, Darren Waller, TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts, that type of a guy. But if I miss out on any of them, obviously I can just wait and see what I got later in the double-digit rounds and go from there. So that is at least an overview of my Dynasty Startup strategy in Superflex drafts, so we can see what this looks like in action. And today I'm going to be using a sleeper mock draft board just because they have rookies involved as well, and we can kind of go through this. And I've solidified and picked myself at the 1.05 position because I think that I can definitely grab one of the top quarterbacks at that position and maybe see where I am at the quarterback position on the way back. So I'm at the 1.05. we can begin the draft and see what goes on here. What's up, YouTube? So, so I recorded this entire Superflex draft, mock draft. Well, at least I thought I was recording it. I didn't record it, but I did the whole thing and pretended like I was recording it until I realized at the very end of it that I was not recording any of it. So this Monday, dude, this Monday is absolutely horrible. I've had like the worst day possible. This is absolutely insane. So I'm not going to record a whole new video just to kind of talk through a rookie draft. But this is at least how the board fell out. And I can kind of, you know, show a little bit here what we got going on with this draft. So I drafted this entire mock draft, and here I'm here at the 1.05, you know, and I recorded this whole thing thinking I was recording, but I didn't hit the record button. That sucks. Okay. But I can talk through it. So this is what I want to talk through and kind of show you guys my you know, behind the curtain of what my actual strategy is. I really like how my team ended up. Kind of disregard where the quarterbacks are going. This is a Superflex mock draft. So disregard maybe all of the red right here, because I think all of the red right here would be up like here. But overall, I feel like the players are pretty accurate, not necessarily to where they would be in terms of actual round and pick, but I feel like the players are accurate in terms of where they were going in relation to other players at the position, other players at other positions. And I feel like that's all pretty good. And the overall build of my team is still there. And I still really like that. So we can start at the very top here. I basically, you know, Kyler Murray, I feel like was like an easy pick. It was between Kyler Murray or Josh Allen or Dak Prescott. I just went with Kyler Murray. I felt like that was a personal pick for me. You guys can go with whoever you want there. But basically, to begin my strategy is just to lock in one of these top quarterbacks. If I can lock in, you know, one of these top 6 quarterbacks right here, all the way down to Dak Prescott, I feel very confident in what I'm going to do and what I'm going to build over this Dynasty Startup draft. Second round, I'm also looking to add a quarterback. In this one, it just ended up being Joe Burrow. That might not be, you know, necessarily accurate in terms of what you're pairing with Kyler Murray, but I'm looking overall to basically partner and pair 2 quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds, because I feel like a lot of the other skill players kind of get bumped down, especially nowadays with the quarterback position in the Superflex leagues getting bumped up so heavily. A lot of these positional players get bumped down. So I really like having the ability to pair 2 quarterbacks in the first and second round and moving forward with that. In the third round here, because it was an early third and we were still in a pretty good position with the wide receivers, I was able to solidify myself one of my top wide receivers as well in Calvin Ridley. You know, you can definitely pick. I passed on CeeDee Lamb, DeAndre Hopkins, Jamar Chase, Terry McLaurin. I feel like a lot of these guys are very similar at the top here. Maybe not so much like Jefferson and Antonio Brown. They might be in a tier of themselves. But when you get to like Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, and the other wide receivers after him, I feel like they're all pretty similar and they're all pretty much the same guy. Just take whoever you want. But the point remains that I can solidify one of those top wide receivers and be very happy, especially after I got Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow. Here in the 4th round, I went with Travis Etienne. This was just kind of going with a modified 0 RB Dynasty Startup approach, basically because I knew that this whole area right here, rounds 5 through 7 in this draft, are, you know, just wide receivers out the wazoo. It's all these wide receivers, and I knew that I could go for some wide receivers here, and I don't necessarily like the running backs here in this part. If I was going to go for a top or, you know, more top running back, you know, it wouldn't be one of these guys. So I went with Travis Etienne kind of as like an end of a tier at the running back position there. You could have went with Eckler or Mixon or Sanders, but I like Etienne the most out of all of them for longevity and also future production. Maybe not immediate production, but future production. I like that a lot. And then, like I said here, rounds 5 through 8, I was just attacking the wide receiver position, adding on to Calvin Ridley, not really worried about running backs. So I went Amari Cooper and then Noah Fant, I felt like was the end of a tier for tight ends. So I went with Noah Fant there, and then Cooper Kupp and Elijah Moore to solidify my top 4 wide receivers and also get myself an every week starter at the tight end position in Noah Fant, and a guy who I think could actually, you know, push for potential top 5 tight end production overall at the end of the season. He could be up there, maybe tight end 6 or 7, but a more not just streamable tight end, a more, you know, consistent guy that I can believe in and week out in Noah Fant. And I really like having him there on my team. So after I had the top 4 wide receivers here in Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, and Elijah Moore, I had Travis Etienne, and this is basically where zero RB strategy really kicks in. I'm just grabbing guys who I can make an argument for are going to have some workload, either in first or second down territory, third down territory as a PPR guy, maybe a backup who can really ascend the depth chart, or a primary backup who, if their starter gets hurt, basically comes in and has a pretty good workload whenever that starter gets hurt. So that's basically the name of the game here for the rest of these rounds. And that's where I really took, Damian Harris, James Conner, Tony Pollard. Damian Harris, the guy who can, play the first and second down role for the New England Patriots, maybe have some pretty good volume, 15, 16 plus touches per game. I really, really like that opportunity with Damian Harris. James Conner, pretty similar, older than Damian Harris, but I feel like is a pretty similar back, a guy who I believe can come in and have, 220 carries in 2021, assuming he stays healthy. A guy who I think could be kind of like what Kenyon Drake was for the Cardinals last year. And that might not sound sexy, but, Kenyon Drake was a top 18 running back in fantasy last year. And I think James Conner comes into a lot of that workload. And Chase Edmonds, it still does what he does in the receiving game. Maybe he eats a little bit more into the rushing game, but, Chase Edmonds is more of a caught back and a change of pace kind of guy. James Conner was, signed there and was brought in to be the Kenyon Drake replacement. So I like grabbing James Conner there in the 10th round. Tony Pollard as well. In the 11th round, I really like that. A guy who, not even a question whether or not he's in my roster if Ezekiel Elliott were to go down, and not even mentioning it, is Zeke washed? Is he still good? We're not, necessarily sure, even though he was still really good with Dak Prescott last year. And that might be more of a testament to how bad the offense was with how bad Zeke was last year. But I really, really like Tony Pollard. He's a high priority backup in the NFL. Love having him as my RB4 there. And then 12th round, I went with Mac Jones. Mac Jones to me is like the perfect quarterback 3 in Superflex. He's a guy who offers you longevity, a guy that you don't necessarily need to play immediately, especially whenever I have Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow. I like having Mac Jones there as my QB3, and a guy who I also believe could be a pretty good fantasy quarterback. He might, turn into like a Matt Ryan or a Kirk Cousins. I don't need him to be a ceiling type play. I need him to be more of a floor play, a guy that I can plug and play on bye weeks or in case of injuries and stuff like that. And I really do believe that Mac Jones could see the field for the New England Patriots sooner rather than later in the 2021 season. I think he's already better than Cam Newton. And I just need him to get integrated into that Patriots offense and get going and start producing fantasy points. Perfect quarterback 3. And I can find a QB4 that's more of a project guy, or maybe like a Drew Lock or something like that, that I can just kind of see what happens, in the 2021 season. Ryan Fitzpatrick, guys like that I can just kind of see what happens. And if Mac Jones isn't necessarily ready, I can just play one of those other guys and see where we're at. 13th round here, I actually shied away from the running back position. I'm still, basically I'm all running backs at this point. But I decided just to go with Antonio Brown. He could be, more of my wide receiver 4 over Elijah Moore. This to me was more so insurance on Elijah Moore, just in case Moore wasn't necessarily ready or maybe not developing as fast as I needed him to in the New York Jets offense. Antonio Brown could be a wide receiver 3, like a high upside, volatile wide receiver 3 or a flex play that I play in some weeks, maybe on bye weeks or whatnot, who could really show out and do really well in that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. He averaged like 7 or 8 targets per game over the last half of the year, even with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on the field at the same time, with Tom Brady. And so I believe Antonio Brown is kind of a value where he's at, even though he's older. You can definitely get him very, very late like I did here and just kind of have him be a potential producer for you on your roster and in your lineup. Then finally at 14th round, I cut it off here at the 14th round. I didn't go anything further than this, but I went with Latavius Murray. Same argument as Tony Pollard. He's pretty solid by himself. Obviously he's not going to get you anything really more than maybe 7 or 8 points per week unless he finds the end zone with Alvin Kamara in the lineup. But if Kamara were to get hurt, we've seen it a couple weeks over the past couple of years. If Kamara gets hurt, Latavius Murray is a plug and play type of guy. Don't even need to worry about it. He's an RB2, potential RB1 without Alvin Kamara. And that's the name of the game for these type of running backs as we're moving on through the rest of the Dynasty Startup. And basically how I would be attacking the rest of the startup draft throughout, rounds 15 all the way down to maybe 25 or 30 would just be a lot more high priority backup running backs. You can look at the list here of all these other guys, you know, and ADP and stuff like that. You know, Latavius Murray sitting down here. You can grab a guy, my boy Elijah Mitchell. You know, Wayne Gallman, Javian Hawkins, I think are all very good picks. James White as well. You know, Khalil Herbert, Salvin Ahmed, Chris Evans. You know, just all these guys down here. Samaje Perine, I think, is very good. A lot of these guys could just be plug and play potential guys for you. If their starter gets hurt, you just stream that running back 2 position. It doesn't sound like the greatest strategy, but trust me, it works. Running backs get hurt. They get hurt often during the season, and you need to be able to plug and play some of these guys throughout the season at the running back 2 position while you let the rest of your roster carry you, you know, throughout basically the entire NFL season. You're going to get carried by Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, Noah Fant, Travis Etienne as well, who I think could be a potential second half season 2021 play. You know, if you're just plugging and playing some of these guys at your RB2 position, you're going to be fine, and you're going to be a competing team for sure. And you can definitely trade and do everything else during your startup in season. You know, if you're looking more like a contender, you can trade, you know, or pair some of these guys for a better running back to really solidify that. You know, you can go through all those different strategies, but this is ultimately how I like to build my team. Solidify the quarterback position, solidify the wide receiver position, you know, get, in my opinion, a solid RB1, then have a bunch of guys that you can stream the RB2 position on a weekly basis. You know, try to see where the tight end position ends up, where you actually fall in the, you know, in the startup, in the snake draft. To me, I like grabbing Noah Fant here at the 6.08, but I was definitely comfortable, you know, waiting and maybe grabbing a guy like Hunter Henry or Evan Ingram, Logan Thomas, Tyler Higbee down here, Adam Troutman. You know, I was fine with grabbing a couple of these guys to stream instead of just going with Noah Fant, but I like having Noah Fant there as, in my opinion, an end of a tight end tier in this Dynasty startup. So I'm sorry that I didn't actually record this while I was making my picks, but I didn't feel like recording a whole another video. I feel like I already tried to record this a couple times on here with this sleeper app and stuff, and it's been quite a day. So next week, though, I will have a Dynasty startup for you, again, where we're actually going through the picks. Going to pick a different actual, you know, slot, maybe have some guests on as well. But I will have that for sure for you guys next week, where I will actually hit the record button. So again, sorry about that. Sorry for not doing this more of on a, you know, live feed kind of as pick by pick. But hopefully the recap and stuff works out for you. So please let me know down in the comments what you think about my team, what you think about my personal roster build and construction, if you guys would do anything differently, if you guys have different startup strategies as well. And I can actually, you know, as we move through the rest of the summer, I could potentially be testing out some of these strategies and seeing how this works, because, you know, the best way to see how a team actually looks and see how you feel about a certain strategy is just doing mock drafts. And I know the computer might be a little iffy, it's probably a little weird, and it's not necessarily accurate, especially with the quarterback position in today's landscape in 2021. But I feel like ultimately where the players are in relation to their own position and other positions is pretty accurate, maybe outside of this quarterback range right here. But, you know, we can kind of work around that because they all kind of went in the same area anyway. So if you just imagine all these guys are up in like the 4 or 5 range, or even 3-4 range, and all these other guys are bumped down, it's kind of the same thing. But yeah, we just kind of have to work with the limitations of the computer that we have right now until something better pops up. So, so that's where we are right now with mock drafts. So thank you all so much for watching, for tuning in, for sticking with me through this video, through some recording and, you know, technical mishaps and stuff. I'm sorry that happened, and I will make sure that doesn't happen again in the future. But with that all being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch y'all next time.